All right, here we are. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Comic Crack. And my friend, Mr. Sleepy Reader, is joining me tonight. Last weekend, we
Hello,
had
everyone.
La Raza action. This weekend, we have some Sleepy Reader action. How's it going?
Very good.
Great.
Nice and cool here compared to where you are, I hear.
Yeah. I was just saying to him before, I'm down in my bunker downstairs because we're having something of a heat wave here in Winnipeg, and we don't have air conditioning in the house, so I have to camp out in the basement, which is why there's such a beautiful backdrop. I should put some posters up or something, maybe.
Sorry, I was just being given a message by my wife at the same time.
That's okay. That's all right.
And I realized I had our video on, so I just muted that.
Oh, yes. I have it as well. I should make sure it's muted. And then I guess that brings up another thing. If there is anybody on or anybody who's watching, and I'll try to kind of keep track of questions. Now that I'm all about the Twitter, if you want to Twitter some questions or tweet some questions, I don't know. If anybody ends up watching, feel free to join in the discussion. So,
Can I? Well, I should have cleared this with you, but I'm going to say it if anyone else wants to try some live hangouts on weekends. We won't be professional like the comic book roundtable, so to speak, and talk about this week's comics. We'll just bullshit about whatever comics we decide to.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that goes without saying. If anybody's ever interested in joining us, I think it's a really good point. It's not focused on new comics, just whatever kind of topic we want to talk about. And anybody is welcome to come and hang out. Maybe it would be great if it could happen on weekends or most weekends, but there's no guarantee. It's not going to be something.
Right. No guarantee. Yeah. But it seems like we're heading towards doing it more frequently, and that I'd be happy to do it with a bunch of different people.
Totally. It would be great.
And we kind of were joking that we're going to talk about some pretentious comic books tonight.
Yes, I think that's going to be the theme. It just seems to have happened to me and to you. And not only that, we'll probably get into some comics that maybe are considered a little touchy as well by people. So I think it's going to be an evening of comics that maybe aren't the most popular, about topics that maybe aren't the most popular in general too. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I mean, as much as I love seeing people's videos where they turn me on to some great books, I love seeing videos where people trash books. I think you had one very recently there.
Yeah. Well, I love that one. I tried to do two reviews, one where I trashed it and one where I said it was good. Although I think I trashed it more strongly than I praised it.
Yeah. But I love hearing it because, I mean, not everything is going to be golden, and I like that side of things. Some things aren't going to work. Why didn't this story work, or why didn't this book work for me? You know, this is why, for X, Y, and Z reason. I think it's great, you know, actually thinking about it and actually finding stuff that, hey, I don't like it, and I'm not just going to write it off. I want to talk about why I didn't like it, you know.
Sort of on that note of the pretentious and the possibly not liking, can I throw out something that I picked up yesterday that I forgot to mention to you?
Of course, yeah, go for it.
I happened to go back to a comic book store on Friday, and I had heard, I don't think he had read it yet, but in his pull list video, I'd heard Jared Osborne talk about the Eltingville Club by someone named Evan Dorkin. Is he known in the zine kind of world?
Yeah, I follow him on the Twitter as well too. And that book, it's funny, that book has really come up a lot in my world in the past week. And it's something I wouldn't mind checking out. What did you think? Did you read it yet? Or?
Well, so I've only read half of it, so it's a little unfair. I love, you know, it's the classic underground style kind of art, and extremely detailed, and a lot of just attention given to each panel. But I've read about half of it now, and it's about these people who used to be in like a nerdy fan club together. They had their own nerd club together, and they all hate each other now. And it's every bad cliche about nerds. There are people who like science fiction and comic books and gaming. Yeah. Every possible bad cliche you could think of.
Yeah.
Despicable people. They're hateful. And except for one of them is obviously trying to become a more decent person. And so it's very obvious, you know, because they're just so awful and everything. So I'm hoping maybe there's more to it as I get further into it, to just write a comic book about the most despicable fans you could imagine. Maybe if I were younger, I would have thought it was funnier than I do now.
So do you think that's kind of the thing, because they're using just a stereotype of these nerd fans or these geek fans? Is that what kind of turns you off about it, because they are just despicable, and then on top of that, they're also just a cliche?
Yeah, maybe that it's just so easy, and it would be exactly what people who don't like comics and science fiction and gaming would like to hear about us.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me uneasy, I guess. Talk about, you know, stereotyping a minority or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
And maybe he feels this is counter to the current kind of, these are the old school fans, which also, I mean, I'm an old school fan, so although I don't go to conventions, but you know, these aren't the new guys. They sit around in the back at the bar and say nasty things about the women in their cosplay and critique their bodies and stuff. So this, maybe the idea is that we new school fans who are reading this are looking down on the old guys, or I don't know.
In our new enlightened phase where nobody ever says anything negative about anybody, even in their own private time.
Well, but this is just so negative.
Yeah.
But maybe maybe if I were in the right mood, you know, maybe I just was in the wrong mood when reading it.
Yeah.
I do really dig the art. I'm trying to even think of who it reminds me of. It's a little bit Robert Crummish at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny, that first page that you showed where it was just a mass of people is one that I just saw today, and somebody commented on, wow, incredible pages, the detail is unbelievable, and you know, but the stuff that I have heard is mostly talking about the art, not about the stories.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is impressive art. And I guess if you just assume,
I love when this happens. Your robotic voice has kicked in, and now you've frozen. Hopefully one of us is still here, and that person is probably me.
Well, that's not me. Am I back now?
Oh, now I can hear you. Yeah, but now your symbol is up again.
Can't see me.
I can hear you now if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can see you. So I don't know when I'm gone.
Okay, yeah, now you're back. Now I can hear you and see you.
So yeah, I apologize for the bad Wi-Fi here.
That's okay.
I can't plug into our router, which is too close to my daughter's bedroom, and we'll.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, yeah, maybe I just need a thicker skin. They're, in a sense, they're not really making fun of me. I mean, I'm not a fan of horror porn, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
One guy's whole life is horror porn.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he's finally got a job. Maybe you'll relate to this, working on horror porn film sets where
Mm-hmm.
he gets to clean up after things. That is quite funny now that I say that part.
Yeah.
I think it's just the unrelenting negativity of it, and that it's about comic book fans. It's both interesting to me, and it just felt like an easy target, I guess.
For sure, and I think that can also I think that can also fall into kind of what you touched on before, a sort of a form of lazy writing, like, hey, let's just do something about some stereotypes and just move this story along, and I'll just do a bunch of art, and it becomes something that it doesn't really push the genre. It doesn't offer any unique perspectives. It doesn't, that sort of thing. And I can completely get behind that sort of attitude as far as a book. And if it is stuff that's also what somebody would consider offensive, I can absolutely see the, you know what, I just don't want to have anything to do with it. It doesn't move us forward in any stretch of the imagination, even if it is just internally you and your medium, or you in the comic, or you in the book, or you in the movie, whatever, that sort of thing. With stuff like this, though, I guess a bit smaller press, or I guess that's a Dark Horse, wasn't it, on the front there? Is that what it was?
It is Dark Horse. I kind of wonder what the story behind him being published at Dark Horse is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it gets a slightly wider distribution anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Horse comics don't always sell that much, though. But certainly have a lot more access than if it was, I don't know, that Koyama press that you're talking about doesn't get in the comic book store that I go to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe on that same note, we jump into, where is it here? And now I know that it's something that you haven't read. Maybe we just touch on this, speaking of things that are considered offensive and just written off.
Well, and I rather cruelly linked you the article that started, or was the major article about how offensive that was.
Yeah, no, not cruelly at all. I'm glad to read it. I mean, it's funny because my comic reading is a bit different than a lot of people that I watch on YouTube. I don't spend a lot of time looking at what's coming out or reading articles or reading interviews rather with certain creators and that sort of thing. I just don't. I don't always have the time. When I discover somebody that I like, then I will go kind of retroactively and look and see if I can find some things. So I didn't know, I had no preconceived thoughts about this book whatsoever. I saw it and responded to the art. And it's only actually after reading the article, and I don't know why it didn't come to me at first, because I love the song Strange Fruit. We just recently saw a Nina Simone documentary on Netflix. And then they talk about, her version of that song that was originally by Billie Holiday, right? So, and it's a powerful song, especially the Billie Holiday version is unbelievably powerful and heartbreaking and brave for her to be singing, especially in that time period as she's touring the United States and being greeted with all this disgusting behavior. And it did, for some reason, I didn't latch onto it. But I bought the book and I read it and I really liked it. Obviously, I really responded to the art, and it's a 4-issue miniseries. So I had already kind of come to my own sense of what I thought of the book as it's on its own. And then I read the article and got that.
In case there's some people who don't know what it's about, should we say a little bit about what it's about?
Yeah, so it's basically about this. So far, there's kind of one main character that's a slave, and then the town, the surrounding not stereotypical, the racists around them, the Ku Klux Klan members, the rich kind of white slave owners.
It's in the slave period
That's
before
correct.
The Civil War? Okay, I didn't realize that. Because they talk about the Confederate flag, and I don't know when the Confederate flag first came around, but I assume at the time of the Civil War. Yeah. So I thought it was during Jim Crow days after the Civil War. And
so there we go. So Chatterley, Mississippi, April 1927 is on the first page there.
So it would be the Jim Crow period after the Civil War.
Yeah.
Where the Ku Klux Klan kind of terrorized and in general, black people, to my understanding of the way the South worked, were extremely second-class citizens in all ways.
Yeah. So it kind of picks up in that reality, but then throws in what I see as, we'll find out. I mean, it's only been 1 issue out of 4. We'll find out where they take it. There's a comet that's seen in the sky that comes crashing down to Earth, and without giving away too much, there's some mystery surrounding that as well that we still don't know what's going on. So it has this, when reading it, it has this kind of based in reality feel with some things that are a little more, not quite sci-fi, but something different. Again, it hasn't been enough yet to put a kind of name or a tag on it or anything,
right,
as far as what it's going to be, which is part of what I really liked about it. The fact that they mixed this reality with, in my mind, sci-fi-ish type elements, I thought was interesting. And by the end of it, made me want to pick up the next issue. Which even after reading the article, I still am going to follow it through with the 4 issues, says I want to see where it goes. This woman who's of African American as well had kind of dislike for this right off the get-go as soon as she heard the announcement of it, and then finding out what it was about, and then actually buying the comic and reading it. And she had absolutely nothing to say other than the artwork is beautiful, but everything else she took offense to.
And she said this book should never have existed.
That's correct. And I think part of why she was saying that is because it's 2 white men who are the creators of it. And that's some of the things that she talked about on that line I completely agreed with, as far as, and it's something that we've talked about in the community as well, with even gender as well, that there's more female creators now than there has been in the past, but it's still kind of a male dominated medium or entertainment, you know. And more importantly, maybe white male dominated. So she took offense to, I want to hear some African American voices telling this story, which I think is a little presumptuous, because we don't really know what the story is yet. And that's kind of one of the things that I had issues with her on in regards to this, that there was assumptions made about the story when we've only seen 1 issue of the 4. I don't know where it's going. I have no idea. And that's kind of why I want to keep checking out, to find out what they have to say, you know?
Right. Well, I certainly have the sense that there should be more African-American, or for that matter, Hispanic people in the American comic book industry. And I think without having read Strange Fruit, what worried me about her article is, like, I know Christopher Priest, who is a African-American who used to write a lot of Marvel comics, first under the name Jim Owsley and then under the name Christopher Priest, stopped writing comics because he was tired of them always giving him the black characters to write. Where she's kind of saying, oh, these white men should not write black characters, in a way that at least ends up being kind of the takeaway of an article like hers. But I haven't read the comic, or so I can't, and I can't argue with her basic premise in general, that there should be more black voices talking about the black experience
for
in
sure,
comics, as there should be in other things. I had thought J.V. Jones was black because I had read that this was like his passion project that he'd been working on for years. But I guess it's not, and he just has something else he wants to say.
Totally. And I kind of felt that was a little bit of an ignorant response on her side as well, that, what do you mean this is a personal project? It can't be personal to you because you're a white man. I think that, especially now, I think that there's a vast array of things that can be personal to people for different reasons. I don't know the creator's past. I don't know Mark Waid's past, where his family's from. I don't know their lives that minutely, that I don't know that racism hasn't touched their family in different ways. Maybe they came from their grandparents who, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know their history. So to say that you can't have a personal story about a subject because you're not black, I think is a little ridiculous. It just seems a little silly. Everybody's going to have their perspective on things, especially with what's going on nowadays, especially in the States, that I'd said recently on Twitter that I'm sick and tired of seeing these videos where these people are getting harassed and killed and beaten, and like, it's something that is overwhelming for me, and I'm a white guy that lives in Winnipeg, so I have no direct relationship to it whatsoever, but I still feel the pain of it, and I still think it's disgusting and despicable. So I kind of that part of her argument bothered me as well too, that you don't have the sole rights to discuss racism because you have the possible firsthand perspective on it. We have a perspective on it. Obviously, we can never fully understand it. 100% is true. Right. but we do have a perspective on it that I think is maybe important as well, you know.
Right. Well, and I think where she's coming from, you know, taking aside the very angry, I'm going to shout you down kind of critiquing people, which I have a problem with, where she's coming from is the sense that these white men have a platform to express their feelings, but there are black men and women who do not have a platform to express their feelings.
Yeah.
I think probably from the point of view of J.V. Jones and Mark Waid, they're probably giving up a lot of big money projects to do this thing, which they consider a personal project. So they don't feel like I'm doing this out of privilege. They feel like I'm doing this out of artistic need, and I'm giving up the privilege of more money from other places. But
totally, and I'm assuming knowing full well that it's going to ruffle some feathers even before they got into it. I'm sure they were aware of that.
With Boom Comics, they're not going to get a lot of money, right? It's not going to get. It's not like when J.V. Jones does Batman or something, which I think he has done those kinds of things. But I do see her point in a larger sense also that since this is a hard industry to break into, as far as I understand, it seems it's easiest or the most likely people to be able to break into it seem to be white males. Although there have been, historically, there have been, you know, a scattering of black males. I don't know if any black females in the industry. But it seems like they're in smaller numbers right now, especially amongst the writers.
For sure. And I think that also is for the more mainstream books, I think should also be something that gets said that in a lot of indie and small press stuff, there's people of every race and religion and sex and, you know, doing little mini comics or doing indie published stuff. And, you know, it's the range is a lot wider than it is in kind of the big two or the big three, if you want to include Image, you know.
Right. Well, when I went to line work, I saw one black man there.
Really,
I couldn't recall. And I chatted with him and bought some comics from him.
Yeah.
And he was not particularly focused on the black experience or anything. But what I'm saying is, I think maybe even in the indie world, it may be harder for a minority type person to approach it if they enter a room full of white guys in their 30s or something.
Yeah.
But so like right now, DC has started up Cyborg, which is written by a black man.
Okay. Yeah.
The Midnighter, which is a gay superhero written by a gay man. And it makes sense to have people write these things who've had similar experiences to the characters.
For sure.
And yet, on the other hand, people who are gay don't want to be stuck only writing the gay characters, or women don't want to be stuck only writing the women characters. So it's this kind of weird balancing act in my mind.
For sure. And that's the impression, also the impression that I kind of got from her article is that she would have black men or women writing just the black characters, and that's all you can write, and all you can write is stories based on your experience in racism in the world today. I mean, to some degree, it's still a form of escapism, comics. You know, it's an entertainment. Sure, sometimes they touch on some serious issues, and again, I think just to kind of say, I think that there was a lot that she said that I can completely understand, and I felt the same thing sometimes reading things where you have a little more of a personal knowledge of it, and just go, Jesus, like my big thing is just the reality TV kind of world that we live in. I take huge offense to that. I think it's kind of dumbing down everybody to some degree. So I just don't participate in it, and I just don't watch it, and I don't, you know, that sort of thing. So I can understand the frustration. Again, I'm not comparing the two, that, you know, it's just that idea. I can understand the frustration of, this is just something that offends me right from the get-go. I'm going to slam it. But I think there was also just a lot of assumption going on, even when it came to her breaking down the end of the book about a character that we just get introduced to in storytelling. There's certain things that you want to do in storytelling is make things a little bit more of a mystery to get people to come back for the second issue. So she was taking what I saw as a storytelling element and talking about, well, this is just a stereotype, you know, and this is what they've created.
Right.
It's too early to say
He doesn't
things
know
like
what
that.
the next 3 issues will do. They could totally turn around her critique in a different direction.
Yeah.
Or not, but.
Or not, yeah. Anyway, I think
there seems
that's
to be just very recently a kind of culture of shaming people online for their missteps of political correctness, for the lack of a better word. So like before that, Airboy was attacked for transphobia, as they call it, being spreading bad cliches about transsexuals, and the same with Justice League 3000, where Guy Gardner is now a woman, and they felt this was labeled a transphobic comic, and kind of, to me anyway, the language used by the critiquers was to shame the writers of it for having done that.
Just for having a character, or was there something specific in the book?
So Guy Gardner is now a woman, and different characters in this future version of the Justice League, which is all written to be humorous and satirical. It's a very satirical, making fun of the characters kind of. You know, Superman and Batman constantly bicker and dislike each other, and anyway, so it's almost like a Mad Magazine version of. So some people say, you know, so that every character makes their own kind of inappropriate cracks about Guy Gardner being a woman, including Guy Gardner himself, who has always been an inappropriate character. So to me, I couldn't tell if the complaints about this stuff were fair, or if the people were just being in character, as this would be what this egotistical version of Superman's reaction to someone being a woman suddenly would be. So there's always the problem of writing characters who are misogynist or sexist or homophobic or now transphobic, people assuming the writer is transphobic or the writer is racist because he's writing about a racist character. That's always tricky.
Yeah.
But so I just think there's a way to open discussion rather than trying to shame people. And it was most noticeable with this thing about Strange Fruit, because it did make you feel, it might make a white writer say, well, I might as well just not write any black characters, or people are going to come out and say how racist I am. And so I might as well just stay away. And you don't really want that to be the final answer to these things. I don't
completely think. Yeah, because like you're saying, you do want the discussion to be opened, you know. And that was the other thing. It just seemed kind of very final from her point of view in that article, that there is no discussion here. This is disgusting. Right. This is wrong. This shouldn't happen. Don't buy the comic, you know, that sort of thing. And if you do buy the comic and you're white, then you're a scumbag too. Like, you're part of the problem, you know. That's kind of, I mean, obviously not in so many words. I'm not quoting it by any stretch. That's the impression that it can be read from it. So,
and Alice Cott just started a comic called Wolf, which I thought was kind of a fun read. Not the greatest comic in the world, but its lead character is an African-American paranormal detective of a sort. And his client is a ultra racist, ultra rich, super blatantly racist person, and it kind of implies that the people running America are these vile racist people, you know. And I usually don't mind the slamming of the super rich, but it did seem kind of one-dimensional to me. And Alex Scott is, I believe, he's definitely white, and I believe he's an immigrant to the United States, because when you hear interviews with him, he has a pretty strong, what sounds like an Eastern European accent, maybe. And he had been writing for Marvel a bit, and he's left Marvel, and he was tweeting publicly about, let's make room for African Americans in comics. So part of why he left Marvel, I'm sure there's many reasons, was they offered him to write a black character, and he said, you should get a black writer to write the black character. So it's just interesting to me that he's writing a black character for Image Comics. And I don't know if people would have any problems with his portrayal or not.
Yeah.
My favorite character is this guy with the Cthulhu face.
Oh yeah.
It gives you a. This is kind of the side of the comic that I like.
See, that's who's going to get offended. All the Cthulhus out there going
All the
again
people with
with
Cthulhu
the guy with Cthulhu face again. Gee.
tentacles are really racist.
Yeah.
But I heard an interview with Alice Cott where he said, I'm not trying to be a savior for black people. But then when he said that, I thought, well, maybe that is what you're trying to be. There's that whole fantasy of being the white savior to the black or whatever minority group. And I guess, ultimately, I feel you just need to invite everybody to the party. There should be everybody, of all different experiences in life expressing themselves artistically. But that's, of course, easier said than done.
For sure. And just to kind of jump back on something that you said about the shaming, I mean, it's interesting that you brought it up. I saw a clip on YouTube not too long ago, a stand-up comedian, and he had made, it was basically a video of him shutting somebody down in the audience who took offense to one of his jokes. And one of his jokes was about raping a woman. And I felt completely on side with the woman who voiced her opinion in the audience. And she got kind of shut down, and she wanted to kind of publicly shame hey, listen, just because we're paying to see you doesn't mean that we just have to sit here passively by while you say something that I think is completely inappropriate. So that whole side of this public shaming is an interesting thing, because
it can go both ways
with that. But then there's some things, it's still, it seems to be this hypersensitivity that we have nowadays on a vast majority of things. And I don't think that it's all wrong. I think that some of it is like, hey, we've come far enough now that some things we just have to let to the side, and we just don't want to hear them anymore. You have to be beyond those certain kinds of comments. And to me, that's one that's, I think that we should just be beyond, as far as like, listen, we're better than that now. Why are you trying to find humor in something that's so despicable and disgusting? Or what do you feel that you have to say about it that hasn't been said? And again, so maybe that's also a perspective with this. That is
a perspective, and that's a very good point, that when people are just quibbling over whether Guy Gardner being a woman is transphobic or not, I lose sight of that, because I'm not thinking about other things, which I would agree with. Let's shame those people for thinking that's funny, and let's move on to something else. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think in general, a sense of dialogue tends to help progress more, even though it feels good to get really angry at people. At least that's my view on life at this point in my life.
Yeah. It's true, and boy, does it feel good to just let loose sometimes, no doubt. Yeah. And I mean, again, it's all sparked a conversation, even though it's you and me with one person watching. But I mean, it's good that it sparks conversations, as it always should. So shall we move past the
move past the uncomfortable
areas and go on to the pretentious?
Yes, the pretentious.
Yeah.
So, well, it sounds like you read some even more pretentious things than I've gotten to read lately.
Oh my goodness.
Start with those.
It's been a week, I have to say. I got excited about both of them because the art looked incredible. One was from this Floating Worlds comic shop that's in your neck of the woods. And they were these two, Tomorrow's and The Yankee, which the cover completely just jumped. It was the only issue there, and it just jumped off the shelf at me. And it's 51 pages, I think. And you open the book and the story starts. You get to the last page and it's on the inside back cover. There's not a single ad. There's nothing. 52 pages. It was $7.95.
For an independent, a truly independent comic, that's pretty cheap, actually.
Yeah. And I didn't feel like it was too much either, because it was just so amazing. So there you have the inside back cover with the last bit of the story still being presented to you before you get to the end of the book. I don't know if it's the art is incredible. And that was one of the things that struck me. there was things like this. That there really has a Paul Pope look to that facial
Yeah,
expression
you're right.
there to me. So I was intrigued to pick it up, and it was just this whole nonsensical world that didn't really seem to me to have a purpose. Sometimes, yes, you can have a nonsensical world, and say like a David Lynch world, for example. You get immersed in this world where all this bizarre things are happening, but it usually leads to something. This one just seemed to be, let's just write all these odd things and draw these weird pictures and have this weird world and take 52 pages to kind of just ramble on and talk about, and get, it just kind of had the sense of, aren't we amazing? Look at how groundbreaking this is, and read this dialogue, and oh, this is some really good looks into existence. And it just read a little heavy-handed to me, which is something that that really bothers me in writing, is when it's heavy-handed and very self-important. It was great to look at, but I thought it was, by the end of it, it was just like, oh my God, I had a hard time with it. And it was the same with Tomorrow's as well. It was just too much dialogue, too much pointless dialogue, too much filling up space with dialogue, not letting the story flow naturally. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Now I've forgotten its title again. In the Floating World comic, Yankee. Is that written by the artist?
No, the writer is Jason Levian, and the artist is Ian McEwan.
Oh, okay. Well, Ian McEwan, famous literary writer. I was going to assume that it was written by the artist, and sometimes the artist just wants some reason to draw cool pictures, but no, it's an actual writer. No. So that's less forgivable.
And I wonder how that collaborative effort went, because I agree with you. That's kind of what it felt like. It felt like, again, which is something that I've had plenty of problems with in the past with some of the indie publishers and small press, that it's normally written by the artist and it's just a chance to flex, and I'm just going to have a story just so I can draw these amazing pictures and, that sort of thing. So,
and the Tomorrow's, was a writer artist team also?
Yeah, let me just pull it out here. I'll flip to the inside and get the names proper here as much as I can. Story by Kurt Pires, Pires, and art by Jason Copeland. And then colors Adam Metcalf. And again, it was one that had a pretty great look to it. But there was really no sense of storytelling. And I think one of the biggest things that bothered me about this one again was, it was this idea of, there's this rock group, and they're going to find these people that bring into their world, and their computer friend, this artificial intelligence is like a Andy Warhol, and we're going to use, we're this rock band, and we're going to change the world, and we're going to start a revolution, and all this kind of idealism and things, which it just seemed, I was saying to you before we went on, that in a lot of people's maybe teen years, you sit and you have this idea of writing this really great poetry on black paper with a black pen, and you're going to really get in touch and really change the world. And there's a great show on CBC here in Canada on the radio where it's adults reading stuff that they've written as children, and it's more set in like a comedic kind of backdrop, where it's almost like a stand-up comic nightclub where everybody in the audience is drinking and laughing, and they're reading this stuff that they're embarrassed about, but it's really comical. This didn't seem to have that slant to it, like it was something comical. It was very sincere and very earnest, and it was a little much. It seemed a little, like I said before, I'm not crazy about the word, but pretentious. It really was. You know, it had that sense to it.
Well, it's a bit more surprising from Dark Horse, who I can think of, stuff with solid storytelling and more workmanlike. But and also more editors. I imagine Floating World Comics is probably just publishing their friends or something, but
that's a good point too. Yeah, that who was editing this thing? Yeah, And even one of the things that they were going to, I think, take a helicopter, and they exit the building, and does anybody know how to drive a helicopter? Well, I don't, but how hard can it be? And that sort of dialogue where it didn't drive anything forward. It was unnecessary. It was silly. It kind of just took me out of the whole thing. I no longer cared about the people. I didn't care. Maybe the helicopter will crash. That'll be fantastic. You know, it seemed like I was waiting for something to happen. It just never did. So it was disappointing. And that's what happens, I guess, when I gambled on these books. There are books that I just completely gambled on, and it didn't pay off this time.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of going for the more obscure comics is a lot of gambling and not knowing when you'll get, hit pay dirt.
Yeah.
Well, because I was thinking of artists doing their own writing, and that seems to be what Island is all about, judging from issue 1.
Yeah.
And when I first read it, I was kind of disappointed. I think I had it really hyped up in my mind. I think we said this off air that we both kind of were disappointed at first. But I will continue to get it. Are you thinking you'll keep getting it?
For sure I will. There's no doubt about it. I really like Brandon Graham, and I really like the idea of an anthology book. And I follow him on the Twitter as well, which is my whole life now, apparently. And just seeing some of the artists that are coming down the line, like Farrell Dalrymple is going to be doing something in the book. And the guy whose name, Michael DeForge, is going to be doing something as well. So artists that I'm familiar with, and I want to see what they contribute. And I just love that there's an anthology book around. I really love the idea.
Well, and unlike the other anthology books that are somewhat around, like the occasional ones from Vertigo and the one from Dark Horse, do short little snippets, and these are long form. At least two of them are to be continued, or maybe all of them.
Yeah.
And the one at the end, I think, is nearly 40 pages long, and all of them are over 20 pages long. Certainly, page for page, it's an incredible deal.
Yeah.
But they're all written by the artist, and I do kind of worry if this will become the place for artists to go do their thing without worrying too much about the writing. Although I didn't, in rereading it, I didn't think the writing was awful.
No.
Just wasn't. It was baggy or something. It wasn't in the shape that someone who's really spent a lot of time thinking about writing and working on the pacing of writing and stuff would do. Like the first one that was written and drawn by Emma Rios. There's an interesting story in there, but she just has these. She wants to shape the whole thing around a dinner meeting or a lunch meeting at a restaurant, and it doesn't. The story just barely begins to gel by the end of 24 pages or so. But maybe it'll get a lot better afterwards. Did you like that one?
I didn't particularly, and that's a good example, because it almost felt like this is stuff that they're kind of working on a little bit in order to almost warm up for other stories. It's kind of incomplete thoughts. It's almost like, here's some sketchbook ideas, this sort of thing. The Brandon Graham one really struck me as that too, of like, here's some other ideas about these characters, although that one I enjoyed the most in the book because it seemed like there was a little more of a direction. And I don't think this one necessarily falls into the pretentious side of things for me. It just falls into more of, I wish it was a little tighter. I wish it was a little more to it,
Well, so I think if you're a writer and thinking of your career as a writer, you would not want, or most writers would not want to expose early drafts, for instance.
Yeah.
Whereas especially the two non-Brandon Graham's ones felt like, in terms of the writing, that the writer was just working his or her way into the story and was slowly getting there. Whereas if you were thinking of yourself as a professional writer, you'd throw away those parts, and when you got to the story, then you'd distill it down to that. And then my other takeaway on it, if you don't mind me babbling a little longer,
go for it. Yeah,
is the second time, the second one by Brandon Graham has a lot of stuff about going to restaurants, his weird imaginative ideas about that.
Yeah.
And seeing Brandon Graham on Twitter before I stopped following him, after a while I decided not to follow the artists and writers anymore. But he always is talking about who his friends are and who his friends aren't. And there's an inside and outside to that. And it's almost like this is a dinner party with artists and they're passing around little bits back and forth to each other or something. And it's his friends sharing their ideas in a way rather than a tightly professional kind of thing. And if you were a friend with Brandon Graham, you might find all his joke restaurants remind you of times you went out to dinner with him or something. And maybe the same with some of the stuff in the Emma Rios. And then the last one just really was a stretched out story about skater kids, and some are animals and some are human. And there could be something interesting there, but he didn't get around to it yet after 40 pages.
There was not much that appealed to me about that one at all. I didn't really like the art. The story didn't do anything for me whatsoever. That was probably my least favorite thing. Just going back to what you were saying about you don't follow him on Twitter anymore. I can see that. There's a couple of guys within that circle, and I've had issues with some of the things they've said before. I love Ink Studs. I love, I've talked about it before. The guy Robin, I follow him on Twitter as well. It seems like that group of them are a little bit elitist in a way. They have a lot of negativity to talk about other comics and things that I do enjoy, and it just in this way that seems a little like you're a little fucking full of yourself. Give it a break. I briefly, about a year ago, had a comment or two towards him as he trashed whatever it was. I think it was the before Watchmen, and I had a brief couple of words with him back and forth about how ignorant I thought he was for just stating these broad strokes that it's just pure crap and blah, 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 or whatever it was. I don't even remember what it was, but I could see that idea, what you're saying. It really does seem like it's this little club of writers and we're the cool kids and here's all these things that we're going to get. And, they're a little dismissive of a lot of things,
Yeah, so in a way, Twitter is dangerous, or other social media, because you'll start sensing the social networks behind artwork, and that can kind of
spoil it,
get in your way of the way you think about it.
100%. I mean, that's a big thing in the job that I'm in. It's great. We get to work with these stars and stuff, but sometimes you don't want to know. You don't want to see behind the curtain. You just don't want to see the scumbags that they maybe are.
Yeah, and conversely, there might be someone who's not a very good actor, but maybe they were really friendly and nice, and then you want to work with them again or something.
Completely. Just as a very quick. Renee Zellweger was one of those for me. I didn't think she was anything exceptional. She was one of the nicest women I think I've ever met in my entire life. Really? She was an incredibly nice person, and it was refreshing, really refreshing. Yeah.
Right. So, like,
anyway,
in comic book,
done.
Like, there's I used to watch. I don't think it was called Moms Read Comics, but there was something in there about that. Anyway, it was a weekly hangout they did talking about comics, but then they started interviewing real comic book creators on the show, and I could see them eventually. They're friends with these people, and then they're very partisan to those people's comics, and it's just a different thing. I think I stopped following Brendan Graham when he started talking about how he'd been invited to do a cover, and his friends talked him out of it because that would be too much of a sellout.
Sorry, you cut off there for a sec. He was going to do what? Sorry?
He'd been invited to do an Archie variant cover.
Oh, okay. All right.
And his friends talked him out of it because that would be, Archie's too commercial or something.
Oh, come on.
And it's like, let's just have fun, and if you don't like Archie and you don't want to do their covers, you don't have to make a public announcement about it.
Exactly. And that's the biggest thing. Like, it's fucking entertainment, man. Like, Jesus Christ, enjoy yourselves every once in a while. Not everything is so serious all the time, and it's ridiculous. Yeah.
But we're readers. I mean, we're in a different position, just like people who are just watching movies are in a different position than you from, knowing the people in the movie.
Yeah.
And I slowly just stopped following any professionals on Twitter. Many of them probably were not a problem, but I just never knew when I'd hear something from one of them that it's
not worth the chance sometimes. Yeah.
was fun to look at the art samples, though. I kind of missed
Yeah.
it. But yeah, so the island could be really, they had built it as being like heavy metal, but with real stories and not just obsessed by sex, which I know might be disappointing to you. But
well, I mean, then you read the Brandon Graham one, and the first thing is about him getting the wolf penis. So I don't know about how obsessed about sex it's going to be. The guy's, I think he started his career doing kind of adult comics and, you know.
But there's no actual, you know, if this was heavy metal, there would have been naked women all over the place. And there's not a single naked woman in this issue.
True, but it is only issue 1. We still have hope.
True.
There's still hope.
And I'm happy whether there's naked women or not. That's
right. Yeah.
I go both ways there.
Yeah.
I go clothed or clothing optional. I'm by clothing. The Graham on rereading it had all this fantastic wordplay in it, which makes me, again, I went with my dinner party or going out to dinner with someone there. He'd probably be a lot of fun to hang out with. He probably does all kinds of interesting, clever things.
Yeah, and I like the worlds that he creates. I like the look of it. I'm not a huge fan of some of stuff where he gets his influence, like same with some of the manga and things. But I do think one of the things that I've kind of picked up on a little bit from following him is that I find it really interesting that there's a whole style of comic out there, the Japanese manga and that, where there's not only it's a different language, it's not English, but there's a different visual language that I don't understand. There's facial expressions and sweat and flushing of the face that have these meanings to it, where you can make these panels of just an expression and it can mean XYZ, and you don't need to, it's kind of creates a shorthand. As I'm reading these, as I'm getting into some of this combat scenario type wargaming, I find it's a similar thing. There's a lot of terminology that it's like reading a new language that I have to kind of pick out what phrases. And I really like that idea.
Right.
And I can see that it kind of comes through in his comics. And I enjoy that about them, that there's these odd little things happening, but it's almost he's creating his own bit of visual language, even with the panel breakdowns and things. I always think it's imaginative and interesting to look at. And it's mostly entertaining too.
Yeah, I kind of see a lot, but I've only read a little bit of, and I never know how to say his name. There's this old underground cartoonist named Van Bode. Van Bode?
Yeah, Von Bode, yeah.
Von Bode. Do you see any of that in here in Brandon Graham, or is that just my imagination? It's been a long time since I've seen Von Bode.
Yeah, there's a little bit, for sure, that kind of psychedelic style of background and thing, for sure. There's more fluidity, I guess, because I think Von Bode stuff was, or Bode, I'm not sure. I think there was a little bit more fluidity to his backgrounds and his characters and things, for sure. Right. Yeah.
Well, anyway, and then while we were going to talk about the Arclight, have you read the 2 issues?
I did.
Out so far?
Pretty much immediately. I picked up number 1 last week and was intrigued enough to, as soon as I got into the shop this past Wednesday, it's the first one I went to grab to make sure that I found the second issue, because I didn't want to miss out. And it's another great example of that world building. I love the world in this book. It's unreal. And that second issue starts tying some characters, and you get to find out a little bit who they are and their relationships with each other. It's kind of fantastic storytelling in 2 issues to have this first issue where you feel lost. I felt pretty lost by the end of it, but interested enough to keep up. And then to have the second issue hit you and it be, oh, that makes sense now. That makes sense. And already having these threads, I really, really enjoy it. The art is beautiful. I really am impressed with it.
Yeah. Well, on the art, it took me a little while to adjust to it because it's different than really any other comic book artist. I think maybe this artist didn't spend much time studying comics and maybe studied other art, other either illustrative art or fine art that, was representational.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got into it, I really liked the art too. But since I read the 2 issues over a month apart, I didn't track enough from the first issue I knew more was being revealed here, but I couldn't quite remember what it was I didn't understand in the first issue.
I see. Yeah.
So I definitely would like to go back and read them, but there is something fascinating about this world that even though I don't understand it, I want to keep reading it. And there's other comics where I don't understand and I don't want to keep reading. Or like the ODCY, which was a huge struggle, but maybe was
with no payoff at the end ultimately, right?
Well, the art
to some degree, maybe that's harsh, but to some degree.
And another one that I really struggled to read and still can't decide if it was worth it was the Alan Moore crossed. Oops, I'm trying to find in my stack, but that was told in a made-up language that Alan Moore had made up for the future.
Oh, really? Hey,
and that was such a struggle. And he was doing some interesting world building, but by the end of the 6-issue arc, which I think is all he's going to write, really all that had been revealed was just some sort of simple twist about well, I don't want to give it away for people who might want to read it, but a clever but a twist that just didn't carry the weight of all the struggling to read it. This is not a struggle to read, but sure. It is a lot of hopefully mysterious things that will make more sense. But it's kind of a beautiful vision too.
It really is, yeah.
And I feel like Brandon Graham has layers and layers of ideas that really exist. You know, just the same when I read Prophet by him, which I need to catch up on. I'm way behind on that, but
I'm way behind as well. And then I also I found these as well. This Prophet strike file.
Yeah,
I don't even know where that fits in at all. But yeah. So is this Churchland? Is this his partner? Is this his wife partner?
That's my understanding that it's his live-in person. I don't think it's a wife. I think it's a girlfriend, but that doesn't really matter. But I think it is the person he lives with.
Okay.
Which made me nervous at first because that, you know, could just be because it's his girlfriend. But I've come to really appreciate her art.
Yeah.
I assume she's doing the coloring too. I can't.
I think so.
Art and colors. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. I'm really glad that I took a chance on it. I mean, there's just something about the faces and this almost very soft pencil crayon type coloring, you know, that just really works so well for me. And like the entire backgrounds here, all that yellow is so nice, and they're not these kind of typical in-your-face colors that in a lot of comics I do end up really liking. That seems to be something that I really respond to, these really bold and crazy colors like that Space Raiders that you were showing, for example.
Right, that was totally in-your-face colors.
And it's amazing, and that's what I respond to a lot. But this really, it doesn't sneak up on you. It just really, I don't know, it's just a really nice change, you know?
Yeah, I wonder if she colored it digitally. Probably she did, but maybe a mix of digital and not digital. Like the last page there, it definitely looks like a hand-colored page.
Yeah.
And then these must be her paintings because these swirls of color kind of things also appear in Island.
That's right, yeah. I was just going to say that same thing because isn't this her right here on the inside covers? Yeah.
Yeah, so I suspect she's a fine artist who lives with Brandon Graham, so decided to do some comics. Too.
Yeah. Fantastic.
But I don't. I'm just guessing. I mean, I don't. Maybe she may have a whole indie comic career that I don't know about. But she does a great job, and she's a good viteller.
Yeah.
Now with Arclight, I don't quite know, but I think there's going to be different. So there's going to be 8 House, and then different issues won't always be Arclight, and will be by different artists and maybe by different writers too.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
But I'm not sure about the different writers part.
Okay.
So I think there's either going to be 2 or 3 issues of Arclight, then they're going to do something else.
I see.
They're somehow connected because of this name 8 House, which I don't think we've had any mention of 8 House in here yet, right?
No. I don't
One of the characters is called Arc.
Yeah.
So I assume she's the Arclight, or he's the Arclight.
Yeah.
The sex of the characters isn't totally clear to me on a quick read.
It seems to be mostly made up of females, but they're also very feminine. You know, they also can read as very feminine looking
Right.
males as well. Yeah.
And when they use pronouns, sometimes people are called he, but I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. It reminds me of some very far future science fiction where you can't tell, where it looks like magic, but it's really just, because thousands of years have gone by and technology has changed everything.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know if that's what Brandon Graham has in mind or if this is pure fantasy.
Yeah, it has that kind of going back to that heavy metal feel that he didn't want necessarily maybe in the island as far as that goes. This really seems to embrace that kind of idea of like, let's just really do something, and really create something. And I also like the use you were saying about Alan Moore creating a whole language. I like the way that he's used that here, where it's this writing, which if you want to kind of translate, you can, but it plays a little bit more of a background role as opposed to something that's you really well from my reading of it anyway. It doesn't seem so far that it's imperative that what all the symbols mean or what those mean.
Right. Yeah, I guess there's kind of a key to the symbols in the back, but I didn't really have any desire to try to translate.
No, either did I. Yeah, none whatsoever. Yeah.
But it's definitely one of the more fascinating comics out there right now. It'll be interesting to see if we still like it 20 issues from now.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Well, and then what are your thoughts? I've talked to a few people about this. I don't know if we've talked about it too, but it's something that I think about a lot with this kind of age that we're in right now with these indies and things. How much longevity do you think a lot of this is going to have? I mean, there's obviously things like with Marvel and DC, there's these superheroes to build on and this mythology to build on, that we're at this point where it's great to read the old stuff and see how it relates to the new stuff. I wonder where all this is going to fall in kind of the history of comics as a entertainment,
Yeah, I kind of flop back and forth. It could just be, there have been other periods of blossoming of lots of indie comics and then they all went away.
Yeah.
Just Marvel and DC were left, and maybe Dark Horse because they had Star Wars or something, which they don't have anymore. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I could imagine a whole new world where this takes off and comic book readers are, or a large section of comic book readers really are about the creators, which is, this is the ultimate fruition of people paying attention to creators. Image is successful because we are interested in new creators, and also we're following creators that we know are good. Mm-hmm. So it'll be, I can't tell if it's going to last. I mean, history seems to imply it won't.
Yeah, yeah.
And eventually the market will shrink and there'll still be indie comics, but once again, you won't make any money from doing them. Right now, enough of the indie people are making money that it keeps the others keep trying, mm-hmm. But if the money goes away, then it'll just be a few hardcore people. It won't go away completely because it never did.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's really interesting to see where it'll go next. Yeah. I'd like if there was another couple of companies besides Image who seemed sustainable. People like Dark Horse seem to be really struggling with their creator-owned stuff. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Boom does some interesting stuff, but I don't know if it's good enough or sells enough for. I think Boom still makes most of their money from licensed properties and stuff.
Yeah, seems to be. That's what I see all the time on the shelves. Yeah,
but they are, like Boom is doing The Strange Fruit.
That's right. Yeah,
but they're also doing other things by less well-known people. I think Boom is the one doing this. Yeah, Boom is doing Spire.
Right. Yep.
But Boom just doesn't feel as deeply committed to all of this, and also Image just has much more. Seems really good at marketing and creative ways of selling comics and all these different formats and stuff.
Do you think that that's because they have a little? I mean, I don't know how long Boom Studios has been around for comics, but Image has been around for a number of years. And do you think that's maybe because they're a little more savvy and Boom and the like are maybe still a little newer to the game, or?
I'm thinking that may be a factor, but I'm thinking Image is literally owned by a bunch of comic book creators who already are rich and aren't looking at Image to make themselves money anymore.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
they're like, let's make a space for all the other comic book creators. I don't really know, but I don't think Todd McFarlane is worrying about how much money Image Comics makes for him. That's just a guess.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good point. Yeah.
Just happened successful 10 years ago, but I don't think there was any sign of them giving up on it or anything. I also wonder, actually, just from knowledge of life, that you see things that are really going great, and sometimes it has to do with a few key people in the background that you don't even know they exist or barely exist. It might be Eric Stevenson, the current publisher of Image. You know, if he goes away or stops working, what happens to Image? Does it maintain this real commitment to all these interesting comics?
Yeah.
And the aggressive marketing and everything.
Well, I hope, my hope for all of these is that it creates this world, which we have right now, that just sustains, as far as like, there's different styles of comics you can read. You can read the superhero based stuff, or you can read the indie stuff, and it just becomes like just another viable, you know, storytelling for comics. You know, you can have a lot more choice and people stick with it. I hope, you know, I really do hope.
Yeah, sorry, I was glancing at the comments while you were talking, but
okay.
I agree with you. And that's why I talk about hoping multiple companies, so that if something happens to one of them, if it's
not a complete
format, an approach to publishing comics rather than just a independent approach.
Yeah.
I was seeing comments by Gore Vidal, and at least at some point, Jean-Paul Ace Peter was watching too. Can I read the Gore Vidal comments?
Please, yeah, please go ahead. I can't see any of the comments, so go for it.
He says, that's 3 who are disappointed with the island, and I too will also continue to buy it.
Yeah, it's
so
funny.
It'll be interesting to see how we all think about it 5 or 10 issues from now.
Yeah, or if we last 5 or 10 issues. I mean, my comic buying habits are quite a bit different than they ever have been. So things kind of come and go on a whim. I know that I'll give it a couple of more issues, no doubt. I definitely want to give it up until Michael DeForge comes in so I can see what he's contributed, but we'll see if I stick with it after that.
I know you've talked about Michael DeForge a lot. Remind me, is he
He's one of the guys that he works on Adventure Time. Actually, he's one of the links for Adventure Time, but then he self-publishes a lot, and he's done some Koyama Press stuff. And it's a little more surreal, and he did this one graphic novel, I think it was called Ant Colony, and he did a comic called Lose that I've got a couple of issues of, and you know, just an indie kind of guy who also works on a pretty major television hit, I guess, as well as like a character. I think he does a lot of character design on Adventure Time. So, but I really like his style because it has that kind of surreal edge to it and sort of cartoony, and it's odd, but I really like it.
Well, this is probably his chance to hit a wider audience in terms of his own personal comics. So that, hopefully people will, when they do stuff for Island, will view it that way as their chance to really make an impression.
And that's the great thing about it. It just touches on that thank God Image exists, and thank God Brandon Graham has been given this chance to kind of, hey, here's a bunch of people that I think are incredible. Let's publish them, you know, guys that might not ever get a shot at anything. It's fantastic. I love it that these guys have this forum to do so.
Well, when I was at the store on Friday, I looked at some of the racks of the sort of self-published looking kinds of things, you know, the old-fashioned zine looking comics. And I flipped through them and I didn't get excited enough about any of them. And I think part of it is I get some of that from the more mainstream looking comics now, and I don't have to turn to something that looks like a zine.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
That's different. That other Eltingville Club looked totally like an underground comic, except it was nicely published on nice paper by Dark Horse. Yeah,
with black and white interiors, and yeah.
Maybe Dark Horse is kind of scrambling around to catch up with Image, and they don't quite know how to do it, so they're just grabbing different things. There just doesn't seem like much of a vision coming from them outside of the Hellboy work at the moment, to me. But they do, well, like that one, The Tomorrows you talked about. So maybe they in their panic, they're publishing things like that because they're not sure how to grab this kind of indie market now.
It's like when Nirvana was a hit and everybody just went to Seattle and just signed whatever band.
Sign up any band.
Hey, look at this. This stuff is a hit. Let's just grab all these other people whose names nobody knows and give them comics, you know?
Right.
It's going to be a gamble anyway, so.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that Gore Vidal said there?
Yeah, going back to our initial conversation, he mentions that Ales Kot is from the Czech Republic originally. I believe he lives in America now. And then he says now you can count on Gore to say something very literary. Regarding the race, ethnicity, or gender of an artist when writing about characters outside his or her race, ethnicity, or gender, I think about Henry James, who was the supreme artist, able to be a hermaphrodite, a critic mentioned that, and become any character he wanted to be, like Shakespeare. Well, certainly it seems like Shakespeare could do any character in any position in life. And so I guess that is great artists often can speak in many tongues, so to speak. Or
totally, yeah.
However, if you were a minority, you might say, well, how come all your examples of the great artists are white men?
Yeah. And I think, and then that's totally more to the point, because I agree, you know, if you're a great writer, you can be anybody in the story. You know, you're going to bring a unique voice regardless of what the character is in the story. But yeah.
It does seem like if you were a minority writer, it is a very tricky line to walk, because you don't want to get trapped only writing about one kind of character, but that's what everyone wants from you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a white male, people want everything from you.
That's right.
You know, they'll accept anything from you, except in these cases where they say, you know, start shouting at you about white male privilege, like with Mark Waid. Anyway, we probably don't want to go back to that.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. So speaking of worlds, you held up The Spire. So you've read the first two of that as well?
I only read the first issue. I haven't gotten around to reading issue 2 yet. Mm-hmm. Did you read issue 2 also? I know you liked issue 1.
I've read both, and I really like them both. And that's another kind of great example of a world that I kind of got sucked into immediately. I love the idea of it, this whole tiered, she's going to different levels and there's different types of people on those levels. And I love that idea. It just felt like I was walking into a complete world as opposed to something that was kind of half thought about, you know.
Since I'm also reading the Mobius Jodorowsky Incal right now, it's kind of amazingly how similar this is to it.
Yeah, hey.
The layered world, the detective hero, but the detective's not a hapless fool in this case.
That's true. Yes. Yeah.
And the art style and the coloring are very Mobius-esque, or Mobius-light, perhaps.
Yeah.
A lot of the character designs even look kind of Mobius-ish to me.
Yeah, there's a look to it for sure. Yeah.
But I'm happy for more Mobius imitations. But I just,
absolutely.
Anyway. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to reading this second issue.
Yeah. The other one that I just wanted to kind of plug as well, or I don't know if you're reading this one.
No, I don't know anything about that one. And
I just read this is the third issue, and I just read it today. And I think I posted something about it. It leapt into kind of the top 5 books that I'm reading. It's incredible. And again, it's about this just immersion. These few books that are working for me right now, it really seems that I'm really getting sucked into these worlds, and they're just so rich. And the ideas behind this one are really interesting too. You know,
what kind of book is Surface Tension?
So basically, from what I'm kind of gathering from it now, is basically the Earth has decided that we're kind of these parasites. Humans are these parasites. The Earth is going to kind of heal itself, and how it's done that is kind of, there's some force that's driven 90% of the population to walk into the oceans and drown and disappear. There's a small group of them on this island that still exists. a couple of people have come back from the oceans, all blue, with these kind of powers now, and they can communicate with the coral, which is now making the waters bluer and making new species of fish type creatures.
Wow, that sounds really cool.
It's amazing, and I mean it's amazing. So they have, and this creature has kind of come into play as something that's looking for these two that have come back, and we're now slowly getting into the history of these two characters who have come back, and through flashbacks of what led them to this point, because their memories, they don't remember anything past kind of the moment that they've come back out of the water. But one of them has run into a friend of hers, has found her, and has kind of led her down this path of remembering what she used to be and who she used to be. And it's a fascinating read. I really like that idea. But they even reference it itself in the book, and even referencing that idea as it's a really interesting thing that the Earth wants to correct. But how do you explain this magic? So, I mean, it's not just purely hey, we're going to do an ecological kind of horror. We're also going to do there's also magic involved in this world. There's these spirits that are involved. She's having these hypnotic moments where she's dreaming of a being communicating with her. And it's amazing. It's really amazing stuff. So yeah, it's one that I highly recommend.
So, and you like the art one in that too?
Love the artwork. There's moments that especially in the first issue, there's some facial features that they make that I didn't like at all, but there's so much good about it that I can forgive the occasional, like, that looks awkward. He's got this thing where people look like they're yelling, but the expression that he leaves them with when they're saying something out of excitement or yelling or anger or whatever is kind of hideous looking. Their faces don't look, but I guess in a way that kind of works too. I mean, you know, people aren't always going to look a certain way. There's going to have these moments, but
I couldn't see
overall, I love it.
Well, on the covers you showed, I couldn't see any labeling. What publisher is it?
This is that Titan Comics out of the UK. Yeah.
The Titan Comics appear very occasionally in my shop, but not spotty. I'll have to see if they have it, or maybe I can.
I don't remember seeing them at all in my comic shop, and the only reason I noticed this is because the cover again jumped out at me. The guy who created it, he wrote it and did the art. He was a video game designer, and that's kind of the world that he's come from. And this is the first thing that he's created comic-wise. It's his first story. It's his first foray into the art and everything. So it's impressive, though. It's one that I can't wait for the next issue, and that doesn't happen as much. Even though I enjoy stuff, there's not as many comics anymore where I can't wait for the next issue. I mean, there's obviously ones like Velvet that I love getting the next issues and things, and that whole world building thing is so important to me now. It's something that I wasn't always into, coming from this, we were touching on kind of underground and these kind of personal stories that I really responded to back when I was younger. Right. And I didn't really respond to things that were more fantasy or that sort of thing. And it's almost been the opposite for me now lately, where I'm looking for the ones that are these fantasy and these odd sci-fi adventures, and, you know, mixed in obviously with some more kind of pulpy genre-based stuff too. But
it's funny. Well, I'll have to see when I get even older, but it seems like there's this series of arcs in life where at first I was really into fantasy as a kid, and then I really wanted the gritty reality kind of thing. And there was a period where, in terms of comics, I was only reading things like Harvey Pekar and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of lost interest in that, and I think part of it is finding some really good, you know, science fiction and fantasy comics.
Yeah,
you know, like Rick Remender type stuff is at such a intense level, and a lot of thoughts gone by. And what you're describing there, like, it really excites me because it doesn't sound quite like any other science fiction story I've read before.
Exactly, and it seems to kind of do what I really love about a lot of the entertainment that I really respond to. It really mixes a bunch of different genres and that into one story, you know, like this ecological kind of horror element with this kind of crazy monster world, with this kind of magical world, with, you know, and it does it really, really well. It seems natural. It doesn't seem forced, you know.
and stories about kind of various kinds of metamorphoses. So
Yeah.
that interests me a lot. So it sounds like the whole Earth is going through a metamorphosis in this story.
Well, and even the two characters by the end of the third issue, they're even them, like the two kind of what are considered maybe the main characters, even they're changing. Every issue they're changing a little bit, even in their look and the color of their skin, and it's fascinating. And I don't know where it's going to go, which is the other exciting thing. I don't really have a sense of what's going to happen.
So now
Sometimes
you
I can have a
another
general
comic
sense.
to struggle to find.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. I enjoy it actually, but it's just
Yeah.
funny how I keep finding these, like with the Knight Rider or Space Riders, and there's been some other ones that I've been searching down.
I bugged my guys at one of the comic shops about that Space Riders there, and said, you've got to get this in for me. And they've done some digging, and they're getting in all 3 issues for me because I haven't been able to find it in town at all. So,
well, I guess I could have ordered it if I had known the third issue was a third print of the first issue was coming out. But at the time I looked for it, there was no way to get that except with the help of Christina.
Yeah.
But anyway, did you end up reading issue 2 of We Stand on Guard?
I did, actually, yeah. And I liked it quite a bit more than the first one.
Oh, you did? Okay. I like the first one. I like both of them. But it kind of deepened my feeling that this is a metaphor for Iraq. But I don't know why. But by taking it and making it this nice old couple that the soldiers are beating up, because a nice old Canadian couple is pretty similar to a nice old American couple.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sort of brings it home. If you had a scene of this happening with soldiers in Iraq, it might be easier for people to rationalize that behavior.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And of course, then I got a kick out of the fact that the house that they're invading is in Dauphin, Manitoba, which I've been to a number of times. And then they start talking about, we've had our passports. We got our passports in Winnipeg. And it's, I love it. I love when that kind of stuff happens, so that kind of drew me to it a little more. I liked the first issue as well. I didn't want to give that impression that I didn't. It just didn't hit me as much as I thought it might. Whereas reading the second issue was like, okay, I can kind of get into it a little more, and it made me excited about it a little more.
Yeah. I guess I still feel like it's going to be like a mid-level book for me, not one of my favorites, but I'll keep getting it. I like it, and it's interesting, and I'm
for sure
curious about what they're up to.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you've been looking at lately of interest?
No, Velvet, I just have kind of been putting together a stack of stuff that I want to bring with me when I go out for this job tomorrow. When I leave tomorrow, I'll have a little bit of time to read, to wind down at the end of the night. Right. One thing I wanted to kind of just talk about was Mr. Tom has gotten into, we found for cheap a graphic novel of the very first 10 issues of The Avengers. And he powered through that book like a champ. And after every single issue, got really excited about it. And we went and we just recently found... Sorry, excuse me.
Does he view it as a historic artifact, or does he just live in the now of the old Marvel comics?
A little bit of both. He's really fascinated with, oh, Dad, this issue had this guy's first appearance, and oh, this is what they look like. Like that side of it, he really liked. But he also was getting into the storytelling. He enjoyed the kind of just the world of it,
Right. Because he's been reading a lot, or you have been reading with him a lot of the modern Jonathan Hickman Avengers, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
a very Baroque version of compared to.
Well, that was always my thought, that maybe he'd look at it as like, wow, what is this? It's really, because it's a completely different mindset. But I'm really excited that he's responded the way that he has. So we went out again and we found this for cheap, the hardcover version.
Oh, the next 10 issues.
Yeah, of 11 to 20, which he was really excited. And then he also found this, that he broke open his piggy bank, mind you,
wow.
so he could buy these books for himself. which
Those
excites
are not cheap, right? Even when they're on sale, they're probably pretty expensive.
They were $10 Canadian a piece.
Oh,
which
wow,
is,
that's a bargain. I was
yeah,
just
it's
looking
a
at
real
one on
bargain.
sale for $25 at the shop I was at.
Yeah, they have a
Some things
whole.
are cheaper in Canada.
They've got a whole well upstairs at this one spot. They have so many graphic novels in that store. They need to make room. They bought a couple of, because I was asking him why they're so cheap. He said they bought a couple of collections from a couple of guys, and they just ended up sitting downstairs for so long and not moving. They were like, screw it, we've got to make room. So they bumped them upstairs to where they have kind of their back issues and have about, I don't know, maybe 10 long boxes filled with heavily discounted graphic novels and hardcovers and really, really discounted, so
Right.
it's been kind of a gold mine for us.
Yeah, those Marvel Masterworks are nice, but the list price is usually like $50 or something crazy.
I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah. $48 or $50 Canadian, $42.25 Canadian. So $34.95 US.
Oh, that's better than I thought. Some I've seen were around 50, but well, I'm really, I don't know why, but I'm really happy that he's enjoying them.
I'm just really excited about it because he's really getting into the whole world of comics. I mean,
right.
I think it's great that he wants to know where some of these characters came from. And he did say that, which I found really funny because I thought it would be the opposite. He did say that, wow, it took me a long time to read some of those issues, Dad. There's a lot of words in it. It's like, really, compared to the Hickman stuff we're reading now, I find the new books so wordy, and the type of information they're getting across sometimes in the new books are so dense idea-wise that, to me, I would think that those would be much more difficult for him to wade through than these older books. But I don't know, I guess that's a perspective, right? So
well, maybe I haven't read the Jonathan Hickman Avengers in quite a while, but maybe it's still got bigger pictures, less pictures per page and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas those old one may have 6 panels per page every page.
That's very true. Yeah, absolutely. That's got to be one of the main things. Yeah.
Well, because I know what you like, I found this interesting thing, and maybe you'll be able to find these somewhere. Caliber Comics at some point published something called Mobius Comics, and each issue has a little bit of a regular Mobius story, and then it has someone else working from a Mobius script doing their imitation of Mobius. At least this is judging from the one issue I found. So at the back, they show Mobius's thumbnails for it. So the artist just got these very sketchy thumbnails from Mobius and then created their own story. I think this one is either wordless or nearly wordless. And then the final feature is storyboarding by Mobius that he must have done. I guess he did a lot of movie storyboarding.
He did, yeah.
So I don't know if this was unusual, because it's so hard to find anything Mobius, but I just found this in a dollar bin.
Get out of town.
So I'm hoping to find more of them. It's an odd curiosity, both because Caliber Comics, whoever heard of, that's a very minor indie publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of having a different, so they say at the back which artist will do a Mobius comic next week, I think, or next month.
So do they give any kind of background detail on like where the thumbnail sketches came from? Was it something that he did thumbnail sketches for that artist, or was this just stuff he was working on that never got completed that they found?
They just seem to talk about the artist, what the artist, other stuff the artist doing the Mobius did. And then they just, without explanation, show his thumbnails.
Wow.
And I haven't tried reading. There's little bits of text that go with the I would forget what you call them, the storyboard. Where do they? So they call them Azark Jams. So it's that character Azark of his. They just say next issue will be a new guest artist. So yeah, it's just, it's definitely, I guess, for the hardcore Mobius fan, but it's interesting that it seems like something you might find just lying around somewhere.
It's crazy score that you would find that in a dollar bin. I mean, even though, I mean, just having his name and art on the cover, you'd think
That's true.
make its way to a
The
dollar.
alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just never even heard of this, even when I've heard people talking about where Mobius has been reprinted before, like by Dark Horse and by Marvel and by DC. But
it's not a name that's come up, yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you've started reading the Incal book as well, too?
Yeah, and I'm trying, as I read each section of it, I'm recording a video, and then I'm going to put the videos together and put them up. So, but I'm reading it slowly, so I'm only halfway through the second graphic novel that makes up the 7 graphic novels. I'm really enjoying it a lot. It's not as grown up or as visually sophisticated as comics being published now, even though it was the most grown up thing that I had seen at the time, or most unusual, because I did read parts of this in Heavy Metal, I think, back in the early 80s.
Yeah. So the impact is different for sure. Yeah.
There is a sense of a historical document. And I come in with a prejudice against Jodorowsky.
Really?
Not that I don't respect him, but I've seen a couple of his movies, and they don't seem to promise good storytelling.
Oh, really? Hey, interesting. Yeah. Okay, I hear you.
The ones I saw anyway have little regard to storytelling. But he seems to do a decent job in Incal.
Yeah. Have you seen Holy Mountain of Jodorowsky's?
I can't remember. I think I saw El Topo, and maybe I saw Holy Mountain. I can't remember which is what. It's been a long time, and they blur. The two I saw are all blurred in my head.
For sure, yeah. I would highly recommend seeing Holy Mountain again if you ever do decide to kind of revisit. It's for sure it's different storytelling. There's no doubt about it. Especially in Holy Mountain, he was really obsessed with the tarot. And a lot of the images were from tarot cards, and there's a lot of that kind of influence in the storytelling. But I love that one. Is hands down my favorite that I've seen of his. Visually, it's amazing. The way that it kind of all comes to its conclusion at the end, I loved it. It really worked for me. But it's for sure he's not a linear type of storyteller. Right. It's more about feeling and spirituality and this sort of thing, as opposed to like here's a first act, here's a second act, here's a conclusion, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and in my memory it was like, what's the next crazy scene I can throw at you?
For sure, there is a lot of that, no doubt. Yeah,
but he takes that skill for building a scene and does have it serve story very well in the parts of the Incal I've read so far. Yeah. So I'm actually perhaps going to have to take back my dubiousness about Jodorowsky.
Yeah.
We'll see as the whole thing progresses. I really want to get a hold of all the Airtight Garage stuff, but I don't know how. Yeah. I guess I just have to keep searching for the old heavy metals, and I guess that has most of it in it.
I was just watching a Comic Guy Rules Garrett's video today, and he alluded to he found a huge stack of old heavy metals. He didn't include it in the most recent video. He's going to do one. I'm very excited to see what he's found and from what decade he's found heavy metals, because he didn't mention how old they were or if it was stuff from the 80s or 90s or whatever. So,
I mean, I don't know for sure, but in my memory, heavy metal sort of turned the corner sometime in the mid 80s, or at least that's when I stopped buying it, because it just seemed it seemed like the masturbatory aspect overcame it. But I don't really know for sure when that happened. It might have been the 90s, but I can't
remember who mentioned it to me, but somebody in one of the comments of my video, sorry for forgetting who it was, if you are watching, had mentioned that Grant Morrison is going to take over editing duties of heavy metal next year.
Well, Gore Vidal has discussed that with me in comments. I don't know if he mentioned it in a video, but that apparently is true.
Yeah.
And apparently he's really going to be the editor, but I wonder how long that'll last. But it certainly should help get attention to heavy metal. So I did pick up Heavy Metal a year or two ago, and it wasn't masturbatory anymore, but it wasn't very good.
Yeah.
But it had a guest editor, so I don't know what its regular editor has been like.
Yeah, every once in a while I pick it up just to kind of leaf through it, and I haven't bought one of the new ones, just kind of out of interest to see what's going on, and same kind of thing. Nothing has ever struck me as like, oh, that looks amazing, and wanting to pick it up, you know?
Right. And anyone who does like heavy metal of these other periods, I'm not against masturbatory material, but I just was not personally, I used other things for that purpose.
Yes.
Gore Vidal mentions that he's interested in Surface Tension now. He also says, regarding Velvet, I can't get beyond the Susan Sontag silver streak.
See, I love it. I love that.
Uh-huh.
And
I knew that hair kind of reminded me of somebody, but I didn't know it was Susan Sontag.
in this latest issue, there's you get a couple of pages of the story, and then there's kind of a spread of her with the word velvet behind her and stuff that just, I sat and looked at that page for a good 5 minutes. It was, his art just blows me away in that book. I really enjoy the Velvet story. I'm really interested to see where it's going, and it's at the point now where I think I'm gonna have to reread all the issues because I'm losing some of the threads. I'm forgetting kind of which characters had relation to which characters and that sort of, and it feels like it's getting a lot denser now too, where I need to remind myself who's who and what's going on, you know?
Yeah, I read the first trade and liked it a lot and was planning to get the next, but I kind of forgot about it, so I need to go out and get it. I assume it's out now.
Yeah,
I heard that it's it was good to start with and got even better as it went along. Is that your feeling too? That's
my feeling for sure. Yeah, I mean, it struck me as kind of something I was going to enjoy right out of the gate, but I don't know. I'm more involved with the characters now, and here I'll just show you that page. There's the page there.
Which I love that.
Sorry, what's
Velvet's a perfect example of. It feels to me with a lot of Image books, the artists bring their A game far more than they do. The same artist at Marvel or DC is not doing nearly as good work. I think because, you know, when the book succeeds, they get a lot more money than they do at Marvel or DC.
For sure. And I think the hiatus is a big thing too. They get they're not kind of regulated to, well, it's the next month, you got to have the book. At least this, they get a bit of, okay, we're on hiatus. We're going to have a couple months to kind of catch our breath, do something else, work on some ideas. They get that time, which I think is fantastic. I mean, as much as sometimes the hiatus frustrates me, I'm so glad that they get it, that they don't have to have a fill-in artist or an issue where the art is lackluster, like a bit of Sean Phillips' work there late near the end on Fatale had that kind of feel to me a little bit, that it wasn't kind of up to his top-notch work. It felt like it was a little more rushed because of scheduling, you know? So.
Yeah, I kind of felt that a bit about, well, I haven't read the Fatale, but the most recent book they're doing now after Fatale.
The Fade Out?
The Fade Out.
Yeah.
Some of the issues seem less good art-wise than others, but.
It's true, and I would agree with that. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's just getting used to his style because I've seen it so much now that I'm a little bit more nitpicky about it. I don't know. There's something, and I just can't put my finger on it. What's kind of missing for me, you know?
I wonder if he's getting a little bored with it, maybe, because the stories are different between Fatale and the current one.
The Fade Out.
Yeah. But kind of visually, they're very similar. That noir thing that he has to keep doing over and over again. I don't know. I still like them a lot. So that's just total hot air theorizing.
For sure, yeah, and I agree. I like the Fade Out as well too. Fatale, I wasn't as crazy about. That whole series had its moments, but it also had moments that I wasn't as into it.
And I still haven't finished it either, actually. I have the trades of Fatale. Did I fade out on you?
No, you're still there. You're here.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. Yep. What was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, obviously everything at Image isn't perfect, but I do just feel like you get people just bringing their best work to Image, and I don't feel that at a lot of other places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just love that they're taking, chances on people too. I don't know. It just feels like this is almost like a golden age for me personally, on kind of based on my comic reading throughout my life. It's at a place now where I can go into these shops, like you were saying. I still feel the need to kind of dig into these small press and things just because I love that stuff. But I don't feel as much of a need. Like you had mentioned, I feel like a lot of that is being fulfilled just walking into the comic shop on Wednesday and looking at what now in this Galaxy Comics that I go to is 2 huge racks with about 8 rows of comics of stuff that's all over the map by all sorts of types of creators and all sorts of artists. There's so much right there that I can walk in and grab. I don't feel the need as much to scour the internet and look for something that's a little more unique or, that sort of thing. So it's all out there, which I absolutely enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. It somehow makes me feel guilty, and I ought to try and buy a few more zines, but
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably why I still can't keep away from that. 'Cause I love some of those, the retrofit comics and the traditional comics that I'd bought from that guy, Benjamin Mara and stuff. I still love digging into that stuff. It's a lot of fun because it's a different kind of escape. It's more purely physical. I'm not as worried about the story. I know I'm there for the art and the visual kind of thrill of it,
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned before, and it's almost like this is what we've been waiting. We've been liking comics all these years, and suddenly we're rewarded with what they really should be like.
Totally.
But the grim part of me thinks it's got to go away.
For sure, and I'm sure it will. And the other thing that kind of excites the kid in me too is getting to see sometimes these artists dip into the whole Marvel. Well, for me, especially the Marvel world, where the James Stokos can do a Silver Surfer story and a Galactus story. I love it. I love that we can see them kind of play with the Marvel characters, these big historical characters, and kind of have fun with it and turn it on its ear a little bit,
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, I don't think like any traditional Marvel comic, but they feel they need to do part of that in their spread of comics now.
Yeah.
Hit a lot of different notes.
Yeah. Yeah, they're market.
Stoko does some more of his own work. He's been doing a lot of Godzilla and I guess now Marvel. I'd really like to see him do another indie creator-owned thing.
Yeah,
Maybe
I don't know whatever happened.
He was doing Orc Stain.
That's right, yeah.
And I don't know if he was planning to come back to that, but
yeah, I don't know what happened. It seemed to just disappeared. It just had an issue and it never came back as far as I could tell.
Yeah, I only got it in trade, so I don't even know when it was last published.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a whole miniseries for IDW on Godzilla. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, yeah.
And now he did a one-shot issue for Godzilla called Godzilla in Hell.
Yeah, is that going to be a continuation thing, or is that just a one-off?
Apparently, each issue of Godzilla in Hell is going to be a different person imagining Godzilla in Hell.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's my understanding. I think that's the concept.
It's not a bad idea. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I don't know who else they're getting to do it. They showed an image, but I couldn't tell who the artist was. Right? What was I going to say? I guess one other thing I wanted to just mention is I read the first 2 issues of Grant Morrison's 18 Days. Have you heard of this?
I have. I saw it on the shelves there too. I was curious about it.
So this company that calls itself Graphic India, and I don't know how big they are in India, is trying to crack the American market. They've hired Stan Lee, which is always a bad sign, I think,
yeah.
to create a child hero, which my daughter and I got the first issue of that, and it was pretty dull. And this is Grant Morrison retelling a Mahabharata, and I don't know what 18 Days even means, even though I've read the first 2 issues. But I'm now thinking they may have just bought Grant Morrison's name, and it's not really him writing, because it doesn't read at all like Grant Morrison. And
Uh-huh.
the second issue, the first issue says script by Grant Morrison. The second issue lists 3 people as the script writer with Grant Morrison's name at the top.
Mhm.
They call it Grant Morrison's 18 Days, but I wonder whether he had very much to do with scripting it.
Yeah. Wrote the first one and then gave him the broad strokes for a few more.
But they do have other comics not written by some American star, so I'm wondering if those might actually be better or not
Mhm.
pretending to be written. So I want to look for this one that's called the Sadhur.
Yeah, that was at the comic shop too. I had a quick flip through that as well.
Did it not look good? It might not be any good. Oh wait, no, it is written by an American, by Chuck Dixon.
Yeah.
He's a solid science fiction. I mean,
Yeah.
hero writer, but not. And they have another one by Chuck Dixon, Black. So I wonder if they even have actual Indian comics written by Indian writers.
Yeah.
Or are they just hiring these American writers to put their name on it, and it is written by Indian writers? I would love to see actual Indian comics.
Yeah. A fake company to make it seem exotic, maybe even.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe they do exist in India, but this is like a totally different line of comics than they have.
Different branch. Yeah.
The art is kind of cool in this Grant Morrison one, but the more I think about it, it's totally linear, and it's very just sort of plugging away to get the plot started. It just seems like an okay writer writing it.
Mhm.
Can't imagine Grant Morrison really wrote it.
Yeah.
Even though I don't love everything he writes, there's always some kind of attempt to do something in it.
For sure, yeah. There's always some unique perspective or something. I wonder, do you know what's happened with Nameless? Is that just on a hiatus now too, or?
Yeah, I think it's just on the regular Image hiatus, and it'll be back in a month or two. Did you like that?
About that, I do, and I am enjoying that. I think it's very strange, and I'm curious to where it's going. It's kind of opened some doors that I'm curious to see what he has to say. I mean, he's one of those writers, right? I'm completely in line with you as far as some things from him I couldn't give a shit about, and some things really have worked for me, you know. He's really hit and miss for me as well. But this one seems like, given a few more issues, it might be one of those hits. It depends on where this next kind of little bit of an arc goes, I guess.
So that last issue made me nervous. It's the one where just all kinds of random things happened, and it seemed like either all of them were happening to them or none of them were actually happening to them.
Yeah.
Like different versions. So I don't know if they were replaying the story, or it was just it was almost could have been, since Gore Vidal may be listening, it almost could have been William Burroughs chopping up a story and throwing it on the floor and then picking it back up and putting it in any order.
Yeah. It
I don't
really
think that's what it was, but it almost felt that.
It really did. It almost felt to me same kind of deal of like, here, let's just have our moment of where crazy imagery happens, and we're just going to, is it real, is it not? And yeah, it lost me a little bit there too. I agree. Yeah, it seemed very random.
Right. In the previous issue, I was interested because some of it was random, but it was clear that the people that our main characters think are their leaders actually have already been taken over by the Cthulhu-like evil, and they're all mad and insane. And so you're being sent on a mission by the bad guy.
That's right. Yeah.
The insanity by the, and I wanted to see how that played out, but I'm not, with that most recent issue, I'm worried maybe Morrison won't even get back to that kind of.
I really got a kick out of the idea that when they put the spacesuits on, they're ingesting a little bit of drugs, so it kind of makes them a little high or relaxed or something.
Right.
That whole idea of exploring this outer space and exploring these terrains and things, and how that would completely just mess with your mind. I love the idea that, wow, you have to be a little bit high to do this kind of thing. I thought that was
a very good touch.
Yeah.
There were lots of great touches before the issue that were before the last issue. And I just don't even know what happened in the last issue. So.
Yeah, and it's one of those, again, where I can't really predict where it's going, which is what's fun about his writing. You can't always predict what's going to happen. I mean, you get these little nuggets of information, but then it completely goes on some tangent that you just didn't expect, you know. But I hope, like I think we're both saying, I hope it doesn't continue along the lines of the last issue. I hope there's some kind of bringing things back a little bit, you know.
Yeah. And it was kind of risky to end their arc on something where it was incomprehensible.
Yeah.
That gives a lot of people a jumping off point. In a
Mhm.
way, they should have ended with that last page of the previous issue with the guy hooked up to all the machines, including to his penis and stuff.
Yeah.
'Cause with that picture, it was like, what the fuck? I got to know what's happening here.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I mean, that was, it grossed me out, but that was a brilliant horror image.
Uh-huh.
Chris Burnham at his finest, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Either at his worst or his best, whichever
Yeah.
way you want to view it.
I don't know what else I'm reading that I'm starting in on Northlanders, the graphic novels, the trades. I don't know if have you ever read that?
No, I never have. I've been curious about it, but I haven't gotten to that.
It was another one that I found cheap at the same place, so I got the first 2 volumes of it, and when we were there the last time, I see they have kind of the next 5 as well. It seems like it's kind of one story arc with each volume, and they're different lengths, or they were different amount of issues. The first one wasn't too bad, about a character Sven and going back to kind of his homeland and kind of reclaiming or wanting to reclaim his throne that had been taken by his kind of father's right-hand man. And I enjoy some of the Viking stuff. I'm a big fan of the Vikings TV show. And it seemed like a good read. And some of the later issues that I've seen art-wise were really incredible. I'm kind of reading this first one and starting into the second one. That's part of why I'm reading them, is I want to get to those later issues where I saw stuff that blew me away. Because these ones,
Right.
the art is passable. It's just okay. The story is entertaining enough. It's not blowing me away, but it was a good read, you know. I didn't feel like I had to trudge through it, but it's one of those series that has just been on my radar for so long. It's nice to see it for kind of dirt cheap to try it out.
Yeah, I think even though I'm very interested in the subject because I like Vikings too, but all the Brian Wood comics I've read, which hasn't been a lot of them, fell a little flat for me.
Yeah.
So nothing bad, but like I read a few issues of The Massive and I just couldn't get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I read his entire run on Conan just because Conan's one of my weaknesses, but to me it was a failure of a Conan run.
Really, hey? Yeah.
I could see he was trying to do something different, but it didn't quite work.
Mm-hmm.
He was trying to make Conan into a more romantic character, which would have been fine with me if he made it work, but somehow to me it just didn't work.
Yeah.
So
Did
Conan
you read
just seemed
his
wishy-washy.
DMZ series? Did you read that one?
I have not read that.
Yeah,
So,
because I'd heard good things about it, and I remember trying a couple of issues, and it was the same thing. It didn't do anything for me. You know, it just didn't have enough going for it. So even though, again, that was another series where I heard later on it really got incredible, it didn't catch me, you know.
right. I wonder if the Northlanders one is one you have to read in order, or can you just read any trade?
So far, it seems like you can read any trade. Again, I'm not even a quarter of the way through the second volume yet, but it's a different character. It's just kind of set in the same world, but it's a different character, a different story. We'll see if maybe down the line some of them start intersecting or kind of overlapping, or we see some characters in the peripheral or something. But so far, it really seems like they're standalone.
Right. Well, so I might, as you read along, just tell me which ones you liked best, and I'll try those first.
Yeah.
Because Brian Wood definitely seems to tackle interesting things, but although I was never clear what The Massive was really about. Kind of ecological disaster, but so I can't think of anything else interesting. Oh wait, one other thing that I think you might be interested in. Maybe you can find these cheaply after they've come out for a while. Kaiju Max, have you heard of that?
I saw it. I've seen it in your video, and I saw it at my shop too.
It's becoming a very addictive read. At
Really?
first, it was kind of a novelty. It was kind of interesting. And then I was realizing it was even though it was about these giant monsters on a prison island, it was kind of a sad book. So now I have to be kind of in the right mood to read it, but it's really good.
Yeah.
Or might be a good one to get in trade, actually. I imagine they're about to come out with a trade.
Mhm.
I don't know if Oni Press comes out with the trades as fast as Image, but I think they just did issue 5, so it might be the time for a trade.
Yeah.
It's the work of one person, Xander Cannon, and it's obviously, he's putting his all into it. So it's one of not exactly like a Brandon Graham book, but it's just full of all these kinds of extra details that you can notice that are on the sides of things.
Yeah. The art kind of was misleading to me. Is it because the art kind of looked like it was more for a young reader's market?
At a glance, you would think it was for children or something. It's definitely not for children.
Okay.
There's even a prison rape where one Godzilla-like character rapes the other one.
Good gravy.
So yeah, it would be the first issue I started to read with my daughter and then quickly realized, no, we can't do this. And
Yeah.
In a way, that's a flaw because, I can imagine I loved giant monsters as a boy. I would have really wanted a comic book that was really devoted to giant monsters. And it's always fun when there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
I always loved those Godzilla movies where there was all the monsters.
Yeah, Destroy All Monsters is one of the best ones for sure. Yeah.
Oh, this will make you interested. So there's the people working at the prison
rape. Sorry, go on.
No, not the prison rape. This is even better. The people working at the prison have this armor built into them that makes them into giants.
Oh, really?
And they look like those kind of robot characters in some Japanese animation. And somehow, whatever happens to them in the giant body, like one guy got his pinky cut off and then he was missing a pinky back in his regular body. So there's a doctor who is really empathetic with the monsters. And near the end of issue 4, this is a spoiler for anyone out there who really cares, but I don't think you'll mind. She starts making out with one of the monsters. And she doesn't know that this is the monster that raped the other monster.
Oh my God.
And in the next issue, he as her lover manipulates her to take his side when he's being accused of things like rape and stuff.
Jesus. It's definitely not a kid's book. Wow. That's very misleading art then.
But once I got used to, I really love the art now, and he does these full spreads there of the covers and everything. It's a very unique book.
Yeah, I'll have to try it out.
And I'm not trying to make other people buy things, but if this interests people, they might want to take a look at it when the trade comes out. Or I can imagine finding this in dollar bins, in a year or something too. Mm-hmm. Because it's such an odd thing. I can imagine, it not selling and then ending up in dollar bins. But I hope it continues.
Yeah.
Oni Press is one of my hopes for. They do quality work. I wish it wasn't always $4. But.
Yeah, and they've been around for a little while now too. And they've kind of been off and on my radar throughout the years.
Yeah, I think I mostly learned about them from Travis. I don't think I was very aware of them before he pointed out some of their good books.
Yeah. Well, what are you thinking?
I keep throwing out more, but yes, that's talked a lot.
Yeah, I think because
I have gone 2 hours there.
I have nothing else. Yeah, well, that's how easy it can happen. It happened with La Raza and myself the last time. We got into topics, and next thing you know, it just keeps folding. But it's easy.
So much to say about comics. I think I'm up to like 400 videos now.
It's true. Yeah, no, there's tons to say, and then it's always interesting because you end up talking to people that have a lot of great things to say, and one of the best stories I heard from her through that whole conversation was her story about the first time going into a comic shop and being horrified and just turning around and walking out and dragging her husband with her. I thought that was the best story from that entire 2 hours. The whole thing was entertaining, but that story just was a thrill to hear. That was great.
Well, I'm so glad she didn't give up, though.
Yeah.
Probably partially thanks to her husband, who already liked comics, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, so next time we'll have to try to get together, 3 of us. And for anybody who is watching now or in the future, I see there's 2 viewers, which is probably you and me. Feel free to get in touch. If anybody ever wants to come and chat and hang out, we're more than willing to have as many people come and talk comics with us as
Right.
want to participate. So yeah.
Well, I don't know if Gore Vidal is interested in Hangouts. So he's one of those not show his face on the screen guys, and which is fine. It makes sense. Maybe he could do one where he just shows his knee or something. But
yeah,
Gore, if you ever want to come on, we'd love to chat with you. Or
for sure, yeah.
I've always wished I could chat with Earl Grey.
Yeah,
who also doesn't show. I don't know
either. Yeah,
I don't know. He does. I get the feeling he likes to stage what he does and stuff.
Yeah,
but maybe he'd like to come on and chat.
There's often been those guys.
Lots of people.
That was another one too. Yeah.
Those people. And Christina seems to read all the cool books, and I don't know if she would be interested in doing a hangout.
She really does. I talked to her a bit last night, actually, on Twitter, back and forth. And because it seems, especially lately, and especially watching your videos, there's a lot of comments by her, and now on Twitter, seeing her talk about these books, like, oh, I know that book. Oh, that's a great book. And it's like, wow, why aren't you making videos? Why am I only finding out about you in the past month or so?
I think she doesn't make her own videos. I think she's been on some of Travis's Hangouts and then just does comments. But yeah, I feel like even though I read a lot of comics, I can learn a lot from her.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear more of her opinions on these things.
When she was saying, that was similar to what she was saying, that she liked going on Travis's thing, but she's still building up the courage to do videos herself, where it's just her. But I say go for it. I found
the Hangouts to be harder to do at first. I mean, I'm fine with them now, but then doing my own videos.
Yeah, I thought doing my own videos was way easier. The first couple of Hangouts I did, it was nervous and it's difficult, and you want to be able to contribute and this and that. And now I'm at this point where I can let things go, and it's a little more casual,
Yeah, and it's not quite the same as a regular conversation because you don't have quite the eye contact and all of that.
That's the hardest thing I find when I see myself on the image, like I am now. I'm looking into the camera, but then when I see you, I'm looking at you. It's a weird kind of thing. You just have to kind of get past it, I guess. And
I don't like how Google, if there's only 2 of us, just shows one person at a time.
Yeah.
Because I'll be nodding to what you're saying and stuff, and I kind of wish people could see me reacting to what you're doing.
That's right. Yeah.
You do get that when there's 3 or more people, but. Yeah, so occasionally I just would say, "Oh yeah," or something, just so that people would sense there's someone reacting to you.
That was one of the things that I saw when I watched the Hangouts early on, when I saw like the roundtables and stuff, especially when there was 6 or 7 people. Somebody would make some noise accidentally as somebody was talking, and that kind of bothered me at first. The constantly changing camera of like, you have to be careful not to make too much noise because the camera's going to go off the person that's talking, and it's going to be a blank look of somebody just staring at their computer as they're drinking coffee or tapping a pen or something,
Well, if anyone from Google's listening, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
They should offer a split screen option where you can just click a button and then you could have both images up the whole time.
That's
at
a good
equal
idea.
Size. Or if there were 4 people, split the screen 4 ways. I mean, that would be pretty cool, I think.
For sure. That's a great idea, actually.
Because, it's a conversation going on, so it's weird when you only can see one person talking.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, Google, you heard him.
I'll talk to Google soon. They always listen to me.
Please do. Please do. All right, everybody. Thanks very much for tuning in and watching in the future. Hello, future. I hope we have hoverboards. Come back. We'll come back and do it sometime. Hopefully next time it'll be Sleepy Reader and La Raza, and all 3 of us can have a chat. I won't be around in town next weekend. I'll be out of town still for work, so I won't be around or available for anything. But hopefully the weekend after that, I'll be back for a visit, and maybe we can hook up something then. Yeah,
and if you're put your family first, though.
Of course, of course, yeah.
But I might do something with someone else next weekend or the weekend after if you're not around. But Yeah, it'd be fun to make a semi-regular floating party this way.
I agree. I think it would be great. Yeah.
Because what Travis does is great, but it's just sort of one thing, and it's good to have a variety of different kinds of hangouts.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I'll have more to talk to you about that when we kind of sign off. But for now, thank you very much for watching, everybody. And
bye, everyone.
We'll see you really soon.